Hey, welcome back everyone. So in today's video, I'm going to draw Gamora from Guardians of the Galaxy for you. I'm using the Apple iPad Pro and the app Procreate. So in today's video, I want to talk to you about dealing with art block or stress. I think for me, they're kind of one and the same. So when I go to draw, certain times I'm not thinking as creatively, and that could be a host of other issues as well as just maybe art block or stress. But what I noticed this particular time, it was more significant, and I was really feeling it as I went to draw on the iPad Pro. So the glass screen of that and even the Wacom Cintiq was really irking me. And so all of a sudden I'm wanting to blame the devices, like, oh, these devices, like everybody said, they're horrible to draw on, and paper is better, which in ways paper is better. But and I did kind of utilize that to help me through this process, by the way, and I'll explain a little more on that. But I know from looking back that I've used these for years and I had no problem with it. So obviously it was me, not the device, right? So I started to think introspectively and say, okay, what's really going on here? Am I stressed? Am I burnt out? There's all these different terms floating around out there. And I'll just give you some tips on what I think helped me. But, you got to keep in mind, we're all very different animals here, right? So these may apply to you, they may not. What I would say the best thing is that you do your due diligence, you research, and you be careful of what you assimilate yourself to agreeing with online. But you just test things with an open mind, okay? And then if you find yourself struggling, you talk to people, you get help, because it could be something more serious. And I'm not here to say that these things are going to help everybody, right? But for me, all I know is I went to a device and a process that I was comfortable with before, and I was all now agitated by it, and it really irked me. I mean, I was just kind of like, whoa, this sucks. I mean, how long is this going to last, And normally I've experienced similar things, but not as dramatic, and they were just a couple days. This was kind of ongoing for probably almost a month, a couple weeks at least. And so the first thing I did is I started drawing more on paper, and that definitely helped. Like, there's times that I think we should all make time to draw on paper, and we should never just use one device. I think it's counterproductive. I think that it makes the most sense to maybe have your go-to and the one that you count on for the bulk of your work, but then also to mess around with different tools. Even rearranging your studio helps, and it's so silly, but what it is, I think, is that if you're like me and you're in a home studio all the time, you can get this kind of confined feeling, and also you're isolated from people. I mean, it's not good, really. We're social creatures, so you need to at least kind of mix up your environment and try to get some interaction. So that's a big part right there. But I had already did that, and that didn't help, right? So I'm like, oh boy, what is this? Something more serious, So then what I did, and as simple as it was, is I changed the process in which I started to create. So I jumped on the Intuos 4 tablet, which this thing's ancient. It's like over a decade old, still works like a charm, absolutely love it. And all of a sudden I was drawing better. Now, I can't render in the way that I like to with that. So I knew that was helping, but it wasn't the full spectrum of what I needed to do, but it was helping. So I was like, aha, eureka, I've got at least something I can work with here. That was helping. So I started doing that. And I was drawing poses. I even did a new Skillshare class where I explained a pose process. And I was feeling good about it, because what I noticed is now the part where I was irked about the tapping of the screen, and almost like I was having this hypersensitivity to these glass screens, which wasn't there, which surely can tell you that's probably stress. But I wasn't feeling the stress in other areas of my life, at least not so apparently. And that's why stress is, I think they call it a silent killer, but maybe not. It's just one of those things where you got to be really careful, because it kind of sneaks up on you. And you got all these stressors of life, and maybe you're thinking you're dealing well with it. Maybe you're not, So, but at any rate, I started to draw on the Tools 4 tablet, and it was like everything felt smooth again. Now, I was bothered by the fact that I know that I don't have the same control there, but that was almost part of the problem as well. Like, maybe it's because I'm just tensing up too much on my work. I've had people even mention that, like, oh, it's cool art, Rob, but the pose looks stiff. They're right. Like, there's a part of me that needs to let go of the control every now and then. and draw more organically, more gesturally, and basically with a little bit less control. It's like I think back to when Tim Vigil, I met him at a show, fantastic comic artist. He's like, looks like you're tensing up on the work. This was years ago. He's like, hold the pencil to the back, and then as you get more and more into the process, you can tighten up on the pencil. I mean, just words from a genius, right? And his work is, I mean, just amazing, breathtaking stuff. And it's like, man, I got that tip so long ago, and here I am still dealing with it. Like, it's something about my nature that wants to, like, I think it's because I'm trying too hard, is what it boils down to. Sometimes you just got to loosen up and let go and let it and let it flow, right? The ebb and flow probably comes from that process where, all right, you've tried really hard, you've done your studies, you've done your due diligence, right? But now it's just time to create. And so at any rate, I think that that's really part of what I was dealing with. But if you're doing a process that you normally trusted, right? You've done it I don't know, 100 times, 1,000 times, and it was working for you, and all of a sudden it's not working. That can be extremely frustrating and even add to the stress, right? So then there's other things. There's taking a break. There's walking through the woods. Einstein used to do it, so it must be good. There's trying new things, getting out of your safety zone and trying something entirely new, like even going somewhere new if you can afford to do that, and experiencing a new thing, trying a new food even. There's something about experiencing something new that you've never done before that awakens your senses, and that does, in my mind, tie into creativity. Like I notice that every time I do stop and go somewhere else, somewhere new, I'm usually the most creative. I usually have ideas bouncing around, and I can't wait to get back to the drawing table. Same thing happens when I go to a comic convention. So go somewhere where there's like-minded individuals doing their thing. And I think more than that, it's that you're seeing that there's so many different styles and so many different ways to do the same thing that you're doing. You pull back from that tunnel vision a bit, because we have, or maybe you do, maybe you don't, but I do. I have a very specific idea in mind when I attack my process, and I think like, well, that's the way I've been accustomed to doing it, and I got to keep doing that. No, there's so many ways to do it, and sometimes you got to just use a different brush, or paint bigger, or paint faster, or draw more from your shoulder than your wrist. Like you got to change things up so that you're hopefully latching on to all sorts of possibilities, not just a very distinct regimented set of steps. So there's times that going, okay, I'm going to draw my gesture, my structure, my anatomy, my inks, my color. There's times where that really aids you through your day, right? But if all of a sudden that's not working, it just means, or what I think it means after dealing with this, is you got to shake things up a bit. That your brain's getting bored, and things can become monotonous, even though it's something you love, like creativity and drawing and all that. Sometimes you need a break and just try not to experience creativity, and it'll hit you that way as well. So another thing is just to basically, maybe even develop a hobby that's not related to art. So that's another problem, is that for me, and it was always my dream, my art is my hobby. And it's almost so my job. So there's really no separation. And then when I go upstairs, if I want to keep working on a piece, I can just take my iPad Pro and keep drawing on that. Well, now it's invading upon my personal life, my family time, and that you need that separation. So even though a home studio was always my dream, now I realize there's some drawbacks to that as well. You got to have that separation so that you can retain some of your you don't drive yourself mad, because imagine if you're always working, you're always under a constant state of stress, even if it's something you love. So what sort of put this in perspective for me is I've had this deck project in my house. I've been avoiding it. I started sanding it, then I stopped. And I'm like, no, I got to get this done. But I wasn't attaching me having any enjoyment to it, right? So what was I doing? Avoiding it. And so I finally jumped in on that and, started getting all the tools and sanding it down and redoing the deck rails, ripping them all apart and building new ones. And I'm actually really enjoying that process, and I didn't think I would. But the main thing is I feel like it's even helped me with my art now, because I've taken my focus, I've put it intently on something else with a clear goal in mind, seeing this thing all rebuilt and refinished and stained and all that nice stuff. And so now I come back to my art, and it's a nice breather. It's a break from that norm. So basically, to me, it makes your art exciting again by doing those, having those separations. And then also you gain some self-confidence when you complete, in my case, complete something that I know I've been avoiding. And also I'll finish with this one. Sometimes you just got to shut off all the devices, all the social media, yes, even YouTube folks, but just take a break from all the stuff, then come back to it, because if you're constantly plugged in, I think that messes with your stress levels as well. So hopefully this video has been informative for you. I'd love to know what you think, as well as what you'd like to see in the future. As always, keep drawing, keep having fun, and bye for now.